And I'm live. Welcome to Act One, a Canadian take on news events. I'm your host, Gordy Canuck, otherwise known as Gordon Gauzy. I haven't been getting content up on my channel as frequently as I have in the past. We're coming to the end of the summer. Life is busy. I've been working a lot of hours. I have been online. I have been part and parcel of other channel content on YouTube. Just yesterday, on Thursday, I had been asked to come on as a guest on a lady by the name of Kim, who lives out in Saskatchewan. She invited me onto her channel, which is called uh, My Other's Keeper, is the name of her station, and I was there on Thursday. And then today, earlier today, I jumped onto an open mic portion of George Antonios's web channel on his YouTube channel, which is called Counsel and Might. And we talked about a number of different things. Primarily, when I was engaged with him, we were talking about the antediluvian world before the flood, and I was putting forth my opinion that I consider it likely that the pyramids predate. I don't believe in what mainstream archaeologists, mainstream Egyptologists put forward. Danny has shown up. Good to see you, my friend. Let me switch to live chat. You always remind me of that. But at any rate, what I wanted to talk about tonight was the shooting that took place in Minneapolis. This horrific shooting, and I wanted to focus in on a comment made by the mayor of Minneapolis, and I think I quoted it down in the description to this video. But before I get rolling on that, the usual preamble about you're welcome to like, share, subscribe, all the things that YouTubers say help me beat the algorithms. Uh, and what is Danny saying? He's saying another trans on SSRIs. This is SSRIs. I don't know too much about it. So all I know is that it's a medication, uh, psychotherapeutic medication that is said to have dangerous side effects. Imagine that pharmaceutical products that have dangerous side effects, especially those that are meant to deal with mental health issues. And I think it's fair to say that the individual who is likely responsible, when you read the mainstream reporting on this, they continually use they refer to this individual and say that the alleged shooter. Uh, what we know so far is that this individual, born Robert, later changed his name to Robin, had his driver's license changed to indicate a female gender identity. And we get into the whole idea of transgender politics, if you will. Danny is writing that SSRI, antidepressants, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, are a common first choice medication to treat depression and other conditions by increasing the amount of serotonin in the brain. Uh, it's like I always say, what bothers me about the pharmaceutical industry is so often medications have side effects. Here, take this medication. Well, it has the side effects of weight gain and can lead to diabetes. But don't worry, if that develops, then we have more medication for that. And if you get diabetes, you're quite prone to kidney failure. But don't worry, we have more medication for that. And the way I've looked upon it, it's almost like you're on a slippery slope. And one domino falls, and then another, and another, and another. And before you know it, you're taking handfuls of pharmaceutical products, which, if you're a shareholder in biotech, if you're a shareholder in the pharmaceutical industry, well, that's great. That means increased sales, but goodness gracious. but I want to focus on what this, and I went and I closed the tab. I do this too often, but fortunately, I can bring it up quite quickly and easily. And the mayor of the town, his name is Jacob Frey, mayor of Minneapolis. He's quoted as saying that this kind of evil should never be a tough one. And now I've got, let me get the audio off of that article that I just want to read it. I'll give a link in the live stream if anyone wants to uh, read the story that I'm quoting from. It's in ABC News, so I'm sticking to the mainstream here. And this is ABC News reporting. And where did the quote go? See if I can find it again. Here we go. This kind of evil should never happen, Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey said. And then at a second news conference, Fry stressed, and this is the quote, anybody who is using this as an opportunity to villainize our trans community or any other community out there has lost their sense of common humanity. We should not be operating out of a place of hate. I will definitely agree with the sentiment of the mayor of Minneapolis in that we are not supposed to deal we're not supposed to operate out of a place of hatred. But what I think has happened is I believe that comment was meant to kind of mute any potential discussion about what I will refer to as transgender issues. And I do think it is something that definitely merits discussion. This individual, this guy, born Robert, changed his name to Robin. As I understand it, he was born in 2002, and that the name change to reflect a female gender identity was made in 2017 or 2018. His driver's license lists his name as Robin and gender as female. And if we look at the way the world has kind of flipped upside down and in only the very recent past, like talking over just the last 10 years or so, I cannot imagine a time in my life earlier than 10 years ago where boys would dress up as girls or girls would dress up as boys and then have an expectation that everyone would bow down to and accept their identity. I do not feel like a boy. I want to be a girl. And then we would allow males to compete in female sports or go into female only spaces like, washrooms, locker rooms, and anything else of that nature. Places that were designated as female only meant female only. And it's only in the last 10 years or so that this idea that a male, and I'm more concerned about it from the perspective of of males who identify as female than females who identify as males. I'm a bit of an old dinosaur. I figure, guys, we can look after ourselves. I do regard females to be quote unquote the weaker sex, and I mean that weaker in terms of physicality. Danny's writing, when I was a kid, it was considered a mental illness and should be treated as such. That's the way I have tended to look at it. That if someone has such a severe break from the basic fabric of reality, on my station, I often use that kind of terminology. I talk about the fabric of reality. And the fabric of reality certainly includes one's chromosomal makeup, XXXY, as well as genitalia, vaginas and penises. And but in around 10 years ago, I don't know exactly when this transition started to happen society wise in our culture, where it started to be the acceptable thing to do to affirm someone who was confused over their identity. And but sometime over the last 10 years, maybe a bit longer, we've seen this reversal of a thousand plus years of, and this gets so thorny because it's such a political issue, where now we've had women having to compete. There's the famous, I forget the guy's name, swimmer who won gold at an NCAA sanctioned swimming meet and he competed against women. And we're supposed to accept this as normal and affirming and positive. And if you're a good person, it's the way the broader culture and those who lead it have framed it. Well, you're a good person if you affirm this, what I refer to as insanity. Um, Danny is writing, I honestly don't have a problem with them, with someone who's gender confused. The thing is, they want us to bow to their games, and I refuse to. They want to, they want to join the circus. Fine. It's the way it's often framed. And, you can join the circus if you like. Just don't ask me to buy a ticket to the show. And that I think Danny and I are lockstep in the way we view it. I do not know. I have known transgender individuals. I've worked with a woman uh, who identified as male. And years back, going back, pre 2010, I knew a guy who was actually transitioning. He was getting a sex change operation. That's what we used to call it. He was having the full Monty done. And when I knew this guy, he already had implants, I guess. And I don't know whether he was wearing a wig or whatever. And I spoke to him. I thought he was a little off, but whatever. Not threatened by him. I'm not phobic because the, uh, yeah, I don't, the most difficult aspect of all this is that you do not wish to be unkind. But what has happened now is because the architects of our society have kind of changed the rules on us, it has become virtuous to acknowledge this kind of insanity. There is a woman who I know from many years ago who I remain friends with on Facebook, and one of her daughters started to identify as male. And this woman with whom I knew her reasonably well, we were friends, she posted onto her Facebook timeline, presenting my son, who is now identifying as gender fluid or something like this. And the underlying subtext of it that I heard was, look at me, aren't I a wonderful, compassionate, aren't I virtuous, raising a child to be so affirming of their gender fluidity or whatever the case. And I just thought and pardon me for swearing, I don't swear on my channel often, but every now and again. So you're warned ahead of time. But this is not a severe swear. This is batshit crazy. Um, Barunian, who I have not seen for a while, is here. Um, and is reiterating it has been a while, Sharunian. Good to have you back. Looking forward. I know Sharunian has likewise. I was on my other's keeper, Kim's channel. If you want to check me out there, you can look her up. My other apostrophe S, my other's keeper, kind of a play on the Genesis account of Cain when God says, what happened to your brother? And Cain says, am I my brother's keeper? Well, Kim has adapted it to my other's keeper. We are supposed to look after one another. And familial ties go beyond, family ties. In the church, we'll often talk about being brothers and sisters in Christ. And anyway, enough of that. But Sharunian has invited me to come on his station, and we'll see if we can work that out at some point in the future. Uh, Sharunian's just back from Temple. Very good. Um, so I'm just reading up. Danny's writing that let's not forget when he swam against men, he was like the 240. Yeah, this guy who won a gold medal in an NCAA sanctioned event had been competing previously against men and was ranked 245th according to Danny. And I recall reading about that. Guy was nowhere near reaching the podium in any male event, and so now puts on a women's swimming costume, a woman's bathing suit, and all of a sudden he's, top of the podium, taking women off the podium, denying actual women a gold medal, which I think is criminal. And well, that may be pushing it a bit too far, but it certainly shouldn't happen. Uh, well, he's not necessarily criminal, but certainly those who allowed him to compete in the event and to deny women their full rights. That's insane. But there was one thought that came to me. Now, this shooter, this individual, the reporting we're getting is that on the weapons, on the magazines, that he had written things that were very anti Trump. And it should be noted, of course, that Trump has, since taking office, one of his first acts, and maybe it was the first act, one of his first acts as president, was to sign an executive order stating that in the United States of America, they only recognize two genders. And that's the way it's always been. If you went to the DMV, Department of Motor Vehicles, and you were asked, male, female, gender, male, female, not a laundry list, didn't go on forever. You're either male or you're female. And now with this whole gender identity stuff, you can identify yourself in countless ways. And Trump has kind of put the brakes on this. And he has emboldened those, such as myself, to speak out against this gender identity insanity. However, it should be noted there is an axiom in labor relations, and the axiom is this: they say, once given, never taken away. And you know that in terms of collective bargaining, when a union wins a certain concession from management, maybe uh, you know, a Fridays, last Friday of every month is work from home day, and then later the company wants to take that away. It is very difficult. Once a right is given to a group, it's hard to take that right away. It starts to be viewed as an entitlement. And over the last 10 years or so, individuals who are gender confused, men who think that they should be women, or women who think that they should be men, have been conceded to. We're going to recognize your worldview. We're going to allow men to compete against women. We're going to get rid of decades, centuries long traditions in our culture about how we differentiate between men and women. We're going to do away with all that. And now we're going to let a man into a biological man go into the changing facilities with girls because that's how he identifies. And so, to those who suffer from gender confusion, this is a concession. This is something they won. This is, we earned it. Now it's recognized. And then Donald Trump comes along and in the United States puts the brakes on it. And I have to openly question to what degree, when you're dealing with someone who has difficulty accepting the basic fabric of reality, you're a man and has had the broader culture, the political landscape bending over backwards to affirm this confused gender identity. And now it pulls back. Once given, never taken away. Now you're taking away what, in the eyes of someone who is gender confused. Now, we fought for this, right? Now it's being taken away from us. And apparently there were some messages written on the weapons, messages written on the ammunition, on the magazines, which were very anti-Trump. I think one even said unalive, using the four-letter word that means unalive, the four-letter word that begins with K. Uh, Unalive Donald Trump, because he's a threat to this new world paradigm, to use that. Um, And I've got Sharunian is writing that we'll definitely be doing a live stream during the holiday. Great. Um, and Sharunian goes on to say that transgender should not exist. You are what you're born. Well, I do want to make an important distinction, and that is gender confusion is nothing new. I'm convinced it's likely as old as human history itself. As long as there have been human beings around, there have been boys who have thought I should have been born a girl, and girls who have thought I should have been born a boy. And that what your inner feelings are. There's an old saying about the different what is the difference between neurosis being neurotic and psychosis being psychotic. And the way I've heard it explained, and I like this definition, is to say that a neurotic, someone with neuroses, that they build a sandcastle in the sky. A psychotic person suffering from psychosis, that person moves into the sandcastle. And what we've had over the last 10 or so years is the broader culture, broader society, uh, moving the entire culture into that delusional sandcastle in the sky and totally wiping out gender identity, male, the binary nature of gender identity. We are two. You're either male or you're female. You're a boy or girl, a man or a woman. You're XX or XY. And now, I do want to make a fine point on things, and that is with respect to personality type. Personality is certainly a spectrum. There are behaviors which we culturally identify as being more male, and personality traits that we identify as being more feminine. One would be in aggression. And aggression, physical aggression, is seen as more of a more masculine trait, and being conciliatory is seen as being more of a feminine trait. And now, is that to say that women cannot be aggressive? Of course not. There are aggressive women. It doesn't change their gender. They're just an aggressive woman. And likewise, there are men who are not very aggressive, who are open, very conciliatory in their personality. They don't like confrontation. They back away. They always seek to diffuse a situation. Does that change their gender? No. And there are probably countless numbers of personality, the personality spectrum. There are so many elements to it: aggression, conciliatory tendencies, what you choose to wear. That's an outward expression of one's personality. Some people like dark colors, very gothic. Some people like bright, flashy colors, but doesn't change gender. And just going to read on. Uh, Danny's writing something in here. Also, when they take away rights, they rarely give them back. And this is the thing. I'm taking this now. Typically, what we tend to think is, in terms of rights. Uh, in Canada, we had the right to peaceful assembly seemingly taken away at the whim of the government. So there was a peaceful, loving demonstration taking place in Ottawa back in February, March of 2022 during the Ottawa trucker convoy protest. And we like to view that as a sacrosanct right in a liberal democratic society like Canada. We have the right to peacefully demonstrate against the government, and yet the government came along and they started freezing bank accounts and they ran people over with mounted horsemen. They trampled a woman, a disabled senior woman from Tyendinaga, not far from where I live. And again, he's making the point that once your rights are taken away, it's hard to get them back. But then we look at those who are in this so-called transgender community, and individuals who are confused about their gender have been granted certain rights. And now the government is seeking to in the United States, the government is seeking to take them away. And they're viewing it in much the same fashion and saying, well, if we give in, once they take our rights away, my right as a man to identify as a woman and to go into a locker room with a bunch of girls, if I lose that right, I'll never get it back again. And personally, that's the way I think it should be. But at the same time, how do you deal with someone who is gender confused? Do you scream and do you yell at them and do you just, invite confrontation? That doesn't solve anything. Typically, what happens is when you scream and yell at someone with whom you disagree, rather than inviting dialogue and thoughtful exchange, what happens is the person you're opposing, they just get their back up and they stop listening and they entrench themselves even further. And there's no dialogue and discussion. I don't even know that dialogue and discussion is possible with someone who is so divorced from, again, this fabric of reality that they can't acknowledge basic biological basic biological facts. You're XY. You have penis and testicles. You're a man. It gets incredibly complicated. Uh, and Danny writes what he always does on my live streams, or almost always. Jesus is king. He puts it down. He puts the crown down. Uh, And Shrunyan's writing that for whatever reason, Tamil is the oldest language in the world. And as far as I'm aware, yes, it is. It belongs to a certain family of languages that are the oldest in the world. And it's not the only one in that family of languages, but it might be the oldest in that family as well. But that's kind of a side note. So, does anyone have any thoughts? I mean, right now, as things stand in Canada, we haven't hit this point because in Canada, we still have a prime minister and a governing party that is continuing to play along with this idea that gender is just a societal construct and that your inner subjective feelings supersede biological reality. It's what facts, feelings matter more than facts. So in Canada, that's still the government narrative. That's still the pervasive narrative. I mean, if you read Canadian news stories on this shooting in Minneapolis, they will use the pronouns she and her when reporting about this Robert guy who changed his name to Robin. They will continue to affirm this insanity and will continue to identify this individual as a woman because when they were alive, when he was alive, that was how he preferred to be identified. And so it would be, and I'm worried about the degree to which things are going to go in my native Canada. Is it going to be considered hate speech to not affirm someone's subjective inner reality, even if it does circumvent, even if it does fly totally in the face of factual reality? And what penalties will be meted out against someone such as myself who dares to try and speak plainly, and not in a hateful way, but the thing is, the way things are now is that if someone feels offended, then it's treated as fact. It's like you're not allowed to offend any people. You're not allowed to offend anyone anymore. And so I'm not allowed to express my opinion on a matter because my opinions on the matter of transgender identity politics, whatever you want to call it, I'm not allowed to express my opinion because there are individuals who are offended by it. I'm equally offended when I see a guy competing against women in the swimming pool, on the track field, in a boxing ring, wherever. I do not think that men should be competing against women. I find that offensive, not offensive to the point where I'm going to be turned into a little pile of mush who can't confront the world. I find it disturbing, offensive, but I'm not going to cry about it. Rather, I'm going to speak out against it. I'm going to confront it. Anyway, what's Danny saying? Our present government, just like our past government, hates Canadians. Um, and then he goes on to say, no, make that our present government loathes Canadians. Again, he didn't think that hate was a strong enough word, so he went to loathe. Um, and Denny then writes, in England, people were arrested for chanting, "We love bacon." I guess that was at a Palestinian protest. And I thought about doing a video talking more, but I've beaten that one to death, I think. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict. That's good. I don't see any end to that. So and I'm certain that I will come back to it at some point, but not right now. Uh, it's not going to end. That is going to go on and on and on. Sadly, it's one of those situations where there has to be one total victor and one total loser. And so long until that happens, it's going to be conflict going on between those two groups. But at any rate, that was what I wanted to talk about tonight. I'm going to keep this a shorter video, less than an hour, which is rare for me. But I've already been participating in a couple other podcast YouTube channels. George Antonios's Council on Might. I was on there today, and on My Other's Keeper, where we were talking about, broadly speaking, we were comparing the Canadian political system with the American political system, given my status as something of a lifelong political junkie, someone who studied political science university, someone who has been engaged in the political process going back to the age of, I guess, 12, um, and who lived 10 plus years, or not 10 plus, but about 10 years in the United States. So I have something of a unique perspective on things. And because I'm a political junkie, I have a reasonably good understanding of both the American system and the Canadian system. And uh, there are aspects of the American political system I genuinely prefer to our own. But at any rate, should talk a bit. I've also been thinking about doing a video talking about my thoughts with respect to things like the pyramids. And it's been my belief for a while now that the pyramids, maybe Stonehenge and other of these structures of the ancient world, that they came into being prior to the flood. That rather than, I think mainstream archaeology, Egyptology contends that like the three great pyramids at Giza, that they were built about 2,500 years ago. No, about 2,500 BC. And I tend to think that they were built before the flood, and that after the flood, massive depopulation, hardly anyone living anymore, and then societies slowly start to rebuild, and they come upon these pyramids, and the society is built up around them. The Egyptian society that we know from history, Book of the Dead, Ra, Osiris, Isis, Nubis, and all the rest of it, that Cleopatra, that society basically built themselves up around the pyramids and the structures. And I think we mistakenly associate what we know of ancient Egypt with having constructed those monuments, but I don't think they did. I think the Great Pyramids, the three at Giza, I think they were power plants. And I can go into that sometime, why I think they were power plants. I think Tesla kind of channeled this idea and had the idea of free electricity transmitted through the air, so that anyone wanting to access electrical current would be able to throw up an antenna and collect it out of the air. The Tesla tower that he tested, I think in Long Island, New York. I know it was in New York somewhere, but I think it was Long Island where he put up his Tesla tower that was going to transmit electricity the same way we transmit radio waves. So you just need a receiver, an antenna of some kind to draw the power in, and you wouldn't have to meter it. It would be available free. And the reason I think that is because the outer casing of the pyramids is said to have been limestone, and limestone is an insulator. And the interior stones in places like the King's Chamber and other interior pathways were made of granite. And granite is said to have conductive properties. It conducts electricity. So it's interesting. It's interesting. I I don't think I necessarily have everything right, but I don't think I cannot believe the official story that uh, copper chisels took granite and carved them into stones, several tons in weight and monumental in size, and cut them so perfectly that two could be matched up so perfectly that you can't fit a razor blade between them. You talk about, I don't even think we have the capacity to do that now with laser type cutting. And yet they want us to believe that this was done with copper chisels, that it strains belief that that's possible. So that's a bit of what I went into with George on his channel, Counsel and Might. He hosts open mic, and anyone can come on and talk about whatever's on your mind. So I threw that out there as a point of discussion. But at any rate, thank you for watching. And we'll see what happens in this world. I've been paying attention. I'm in a bit of a different mindset lately because I'm seeing so many people, I'm seeing so many health issues now. I see it daily at work. I see it in my community. I see it at my church. I see it everywhere that so many people are suffering uh, health effects. And I have to wonder why. And I wonder, was there something that's happened in the last, 3, 4 years? Maybe something that's happened repeatedly that has caused people's overall health to weaken. And I don't know what, and there are a number of different sources that could lead to diminished health for a wide range of people. Um, I came across something frightening, just either today or yesterday. Check out pink slime. And I saw a news story talking about two former FDA officials who now refuse to buy from the grocery store ground beef. We often see ground beef. You might be able to get, a package of it for 8, 9, $10 on special. And uh, you've been looking at the price of beef has been going crazy, but every now and again, ground beef seems to come out on special. And then what they're saying happens in the meat packing industry now is that a lot of the waste products that are deemed not fit to be put to be part of the ground beef then go through a process. Uh, and I believe part of it includes exposing these this residual meat garbage, the residue, the remnants, the stuff that would used to be thrown away. Now it's treated with pneumonia and other things to kill bacteria, and then it's mixed in to regular ground beef. And how many people now know a butcher? I certainly don't. I don't think there's a butcher. There might be one half an hour or so away, but we've become conditioned in our society to just go to the grocery store once or twice a week to load up our cart, bring the stuff home, and there you go. There's your food for the week. But we really don't know what we're buying anymore. Uh, and it's been brought up on here before. something that I wasn't overly aware of, this idea of vegetable oils in general and canola oil in particular, and is this stuff fit for human consumption? I've done a little bit more reading on it. Since the warnings have been coming out, I've become so conspiratorial minded that I default to I'm going to believe the conspiracy theory even before I go and fact check it and to find out if it's real. But what little I dug into on the whole canola oil thing has got me saying, not using canola oil anymore, my own personal choice. And, it's funny because you think of vegetable oil and, well, it's got to be good. It's from vegetables, right? But are we meant to be consuming the oils derived out of vegetables? And you look at something like canola, I'll invite you to read up on that yourself. Um, and then Danny is writing that the carrying, getting back to the pyramids and such, the carrying of those big stones is possible if the Nephilim are involved, and the Nephilim is from Genesis, uh, and I forget in and around chapter 6. It's around the part about the flood, and it says that the sons of God found that the daughters of men were fair and took to wife such as they deemed, and took human women to wife, and that they then bore the Nephilim, the men of renown, the men of enormous stature and great power and strength, the Nephilim. And I believe Nephilim comes from a Hebrew word which means fallen. And uh, that's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it I've thought about is, even if you look at the enormity of these stones that they use, especially around the foundation or the stones of granite, stones they have in the king, what they refer to as the king's chamber, uh, Great Pyramid of Khufu, uh, or Cheops. I think there are two names. I get them confused, but the biggest of the three. And these things are absolutely enormous and could even, a free flood giant lift one of these. I wonder about vibration. I wonder about resonance type technologies. I heard something interesting about how when vibration is introduced to chaotic matter, that it brings about order. Vibration can bring about order. I haven't gone far enough down that road, down that rabbit hole, or whatever you want to call it. I haven't gone deeply down that, but it strikes me that, what is it that brings order out of chaos? And vibration apparently does. And at any rate, Danny's writing with respect to he has an opinion as to what's causing all the ill health effects we're seeing on my street. And we live on something of an arterial road into the subdivision I live in. So we're a main artery into my subdivision. And I have seen both on that main arterial road and in behind me, so many emergency vehicles like ambulance and fire equipment going down the road. It's become a nightly occurrence. I haven't yet seen it tonight, but it's been like 4 or 5 nights in a row where I've seen emergency vehicles going down the road. And this is a sleepy little area. And it makes me wonder. It makes me wonder, between, have people had their immune systems primed in some manner over the last 3, 4 years, going back to say 2021 to the present? Has there been a priming of the immune system that has led the immune system to overreact? And the number of people coming down with something called celiac disease, which means they have to go gluten free and start spending 7, 8, 9, $10 on a loaf of bread because their body can no longer process gluten. And it just strikes me that, especially in the Western world, and especially the North American world, it's almost like our health is under attack from multiple sources. There have been a number of stories I've come across lately talking about flour and how it's enriched and chemicalized to increase shelf life, etc. And how so many people go to Europe where they use quite often fresh milled flour, and people can eat bread in Europe, but then they come over here and they eat the bread and it makes them sick. And I've talked on this channel before about atrazine, which is a pesticide which is banned in many parts of Europe, but is used in Canada and the US and in China, and how atrazine has been proven in studies by Ivy League schools, or at least one. There's one famous study that showed that it turned African frogs from male to female, from a male frog exposed to atrazine. A certain percentage of the male frogs exposed to atrazine flipped from being male frogs to female frogs that produce viable eggs. And the question is, what does it do to human beings? Have we studied the effects of exposure to atrazine on human beings? What about on the preborn, on children that are living in utero? Does it does it affect their development? Does this have an impact on people misidentifying and having gender confusion? I don't know. Uh, and Danny is saying he's saying thank that his immune system is intact, as is. Well, I wonder to what degree mine is intact. I did not roll up my sleeve in 2021 or any time after, but I'm still impacted by my diet. And yeah, I do make spaghetti and I take ground beef that I bought at the grocery store. But is this filled with pink slime that is residual garbage from the meat packing industry that has had pneumonia thrown at it in order to kill off bacteria and stuff? And am I eating this stuff? There are FDA former FDA employees who now refuse to eat ground beef that comes from the meat processing industry. I don't know. Um, and then Danny is saying that chuck is a good choice. I think he's talking about beef chuck and grinding it up. That's what these guys were saying they did. They took meat cuts and would grind them up to make their own. Uh, and Denny's further saying that he lives in Montreal where butchers, which is something that used to be ubiquitous, there used to be a butcher shop in every town. That in Montreal, there's still lots of butchers available and that there are a dime a dozen. Danny's writing that we must go back to animal fats, butter, bacon, grease, keep it. Um, and Danny is expressing the view that animal poisons are horrible. I'll use that word instead. And saying that it's bad because it is highly processed, whereas butter or animal fats is not as heavily processed, not processed at all in a lot of cases. You can make butter at home simply by churning cream. Koj Malik has shown up from the great state of Florida. Good to see you here. Eat Me from likewise from Montreal is writing that atrazine is she's saying it makes the frogs gay. I don't think so. I don't think it changes their sexual behavior, at least according to literature I've read. And it was like Yale, Harvard, or Princeton. I forget who authored the study, but what they found, and RFK Jr. quotes the study quite often, is that male African frogs exposed to atrazine, they don't turn homosexual. What they do is their genetic makeup actually flips and they go from being male frogs to female frogs that produce viable eggs. And that's one of the key distinctions between the genders. Male, we have sperm fertilizes the egg and females produce the eggs. I don't, I'm a male, I don't produce any eggs. I couple with a woman who does produce the eggs if we join together and engage in intercourse, and my semen, we all took grade 7, 8 biology, I would hope, and would know this. So it takes a male frog and gets rid of the sperm, and instead they start producing viable eggs, not just eggs, but viable eggs that can be fertilized by the sperm from a male frog. Uh, let's see, Danny's writing in World War II, they removed all the cathedral bells, claiming they needed the steel for war, when in fact it was because the frequencies were helping people and could also ward off storms. Yeah, I think this idea of vibration resonance technology, vibration is, I don't, I think it might be something that the ancient world, pre-flood world, in my belief, understood that it's kind of lost knowledge. And, uh, and Danny's bringing up, if you listen at 400, I know that there are two frequencies at which our radios work. And one is the proper frequency, uh, and Danny's got it as 432 megahertz, but that's not what we use. That's not what our radio transmitters broadcast at. They broadcast at a different frequency. Danny's saying it's 432 megahertz. That music, sound resonating at that frequency, 432, that it heals your body. I've heard that as well. Um, Danny's ring that the FDA, Food and Drug Administration folks, also also refused. Some of them did, I'm sure. There are a lot of people who were smart enough to say, "I'm not going to take, not taking it." And Danny and Nancy are exchanging greetings. And then me saying it was Alex Jones who said it makes, I sometimes, Alex Jones says so many things that end up later turning out to be right, but then he does say some things that are bombastic and crazy. And it's almost like I wonder to what degree is he doing it intentionally so as to limit the range of his voice? If he comes across sounding like a kook, which he does a lot of the time, it leads a lot of people to dismiss anything he says. And it's this whole notion of controlled opposition. Who gets to divulge the truth? And we're living in a world with so many lies. And Eat Me is saying that she meant that it turns the frogs gay, that she was intending that as a joke. Very good. That's the problem with text. When you're reading text, you don't get tone. If you're going to be sarcastic, it's easier to be sarcastic. Oh, sure, that sounds really intelligent. There you can hear I'm being sarcastic. But if I just write it down, you can't tell. Danny's writing, Alex did end up explaining it, but he uses that because it is inflammatory. It catches attention. And that's one thing, having a YouTube channel now, I'm kind of enjoying having Kim and she's from rural town called Hepburn, Saskatchewan, which is right in the center of the province. I think it's just a bit north of Saskatoon, might be considered greater Saskatoon area. She might be in that umbrella area, about 300,000 people. But I do kind of enjoy having the opportunity to go on someone else's channel and maybe extend my reach a bit, help them extend their reach a bit, and get people talking. That's the ultimate goal. And the ultimate goal, I haven't brought it up, but the Bible, you know, get into God's word. That will probably be, I've been wanting to talk about uh, my belief system, what I genuinely believe, and why I believe that the Bible is both an authoritative, trustworthy, and reliable source. And get back to Abraham, do something of a comparison at a layman's level of stories like the Epic of Gilgamesh, comparing it with the Genesis account of the flood, and talk about the flood, because I think it's informative. I think it points us in the direction that we need to be going in terms of seeking out truth in a world that is filled with lies. And I think there's a concerted effort in the broader culture, certainly from the mainstream media, certainly from outfits like the WEF and the UN, to push people away from the Bible. And I think there are a lot of good intentioned people who join in because um, there's a tendency to think of, well, the people who lived back then, the people who lived in biblical times, or even back in the 1800s, 1700s, 1600s, 1500s, these people were superstitious. They're not as smart as we are today. And in many ways, I think that our current world, of the population, that the IQ of the general population, certainly in the Western developed world, I think is a lot lower than what it was a couple hundred years ago, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, or even more. I think we were smarter in antiquity than we are in modern times. And I'd like to go and do a video talking about why I think we're dumber now than we used to be. Where there was obviously, when we talk about the building of the pyramids, irrespective of when they were built, whether it was 2,500 years ago or 5,000 years ago or 12,000 years ago, depending on what theory you want to latch onto. Either way, they were built in antiquity. And we could not build them today. Such a monumental undertaking would not be something that we could do today, even with modern technology. And yet there's a tendency to believe that we're smarter and more advanced than we were in antiquity. Really, I don't think so. I think we were smarter back then. I think we've lost so much. A big part of it, I think, has to do with something called the pineal gland, um, which is a lima bean sized gland that exists basically right about here in your cranium, in the frontal cortex, I think they call that, the cerebral cortex, the front part of the brain where most of our higher thought process takes place. And this pineal gland, I think so much, I think it's basically been atrophied by things like fluoride or the chemicals in our food, maybe atrazine, who knows? And that you'll have to do so. I've got to do a little more reading up on the pineal gland, but I think it offers constantly throughout the Bible, it talks about let those who have eyes to see, see. And I wonder, you know, does an atrophied pineal gland make the human race more controllable? Does it shut down avenues that we used to have in the past to view or to experience other dimensions, other realms? Danny always quotes from Ephesians where it says, "But we fight not battles of flesh and blood, but this is spiritual warfare in the heavenly realms." Um, and I think that because of a more robust, a non-atrophied pineal gland, that previous populations may very well have had the ability to perceive these spiritual realms and to have knowledge and be aware of them. Uh, let's just read what Danny is writing. They had moving sidewalks in the late 1800s, sold footage again on my lunchbox channel. All kinds of things that are out there, and it's so difficult to sort between what is genuine and what is just meant to be a distraction to divide the population. But at any rate, gonna end it there. Gone on nearly an hour. So if you're enjoying my content and are wondering, where I've been, you're welcome to check out George on Council and Might. You're welcome to check out Kim, My Other's Keeper, and throw up some comments on their videos. Drop me a hi on there. I check every now and again to see if anyone comments. Danny writes finally that the pineal gland is affected by factors such as light exposure, especially blue light at night, age, calcium deposits, calcification, pineal gland tumors, and other brain conditions or injuries that, and his message was too long, so he has to write out a second one. I'll let him finish the thought because the way the comment section works in the live chat is you're only allowed so many characters, think two, 300, whatever it is, and then won't let you keep going. So I'll let him finish his thought. Throw out a joke in the meantime that I heard from my young guy. Uh, okay, here Danny's finishing it up. Pineal gland tumors and other brain conditions or injuries that impair the ability to secrete melatonin and regulate circadian rhythms. Melatonin, I know, is a naturally occurring substance within our brains, like serotonin, like dopamine. What are these? Forgetting all these terms. Chemical reactions in the brain. Melatonin is something that helps regulate sleep. And this is where we get into circadian rhythms, and that's what basically helps you regulate your sleep patterns. And I heard something the other day that was interesting in talking about first thing in the morning. It's a good idea to go out without sunglasses on to go in and look. Obviously, don't stare bug eyed at the sun, but to let yourself be exposed to sunlight because it helps regulate your circadian rhythms, let you know that, hey, it's morning time to wake up, time to be alert, time for, and claiming that this will increase mental acuity, that you'll be sharper mentally, and that you'll be better able to sleep at night. And I've actually, as much as I can, the first morning I went out to do it was cloud covered, so there's no sun to look at. But I looked in the direction of the sun, uh, thinking maybe some of that ultraviolet light could be filtering through the cloud cover. Couldn't tell exactly where the sun was, but at any rate, I'll give you the joke my little guy told me, and it's why do ducks have tails? Why do ducks have tails? Well, to cover their butt quacks. There we go. Badoom she. Anyway, thank you for watching. Just over an hour. The usual. You're welcome to hit the like button to subscribe to the channel. Throw down some comments if you have some topics you think you'd like me to cover. Sharunian does that often. Uh, I try to stay centered on current events, news events like what happened in Minneapolis. And I just wonder, should we be concerned if individuals start to have, if gender confused individuals start to have their rights to trash or, and mostly when I talk about transgender, I think the biggest issue is with men identifying as women, not so much women identifying as men. And if we start to take away these guys' rights, are they going to act out? I mean, it seemed to me, or everything being reported about this Robert Robin guy in Minneapolis, the alleged perpetrator to be, the way they're reporting it, the alleged perpetrator of this horrific killing, two children killed, 17 or 18 more who were injured. Thankfully, the reporting I'm seeing now is that they're all expected to survive. They're all expected to recover. So thank God for that. But um, it seems to me this guy who wanted to be identified as a female certainly exhibited what is typically viewed as stereotypical male behavior in turning hyper violent. Thought you were a women, female traits are thought to be more conciliatory, less confrontational, less violent. And yet you revert back, Robert, to your, typical male personality dominant traits and perpetrate a horrific act. And of course, this guy is now dead. Uh, all the reporting says that he offed himself after perpetrating this horrific act. But given what was written on the magazines and the other weaponry and everything on there, the messaging that was written on there, and the manifestos he apparently published, and he had a video that was supposed to go live after the event took place. He kind of had it set up with YouTube. I guess he pre-recorded something and it was scheduled to go live or to go be published to his YouTube channel after the event. And it was apparently something of an anti-Trump manifesto. How dare you, you know, affirm the basic fabric of reality that there are two genders, and how dare you take away my rights? And it's scary. Uh, at any rate, thanks for watching, Danny, Sharunian, Eat Me, Koj Malik chimed in. Everyone who watched but didn't put a message up, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you all again. And again, like I say, if there's something a topic you want to have covered, throw it down in the comments. I'll take a look and probably talk about it. So God bless, and I'll end it the way I so often like to end it, with a passage, with a reading from the Book of Numbers. I'll read it right out of the passage. It's chapter 6 or 7. I don't have it marked, but see there. Where is it? Here it is. From chapter 6, verse 22. The Lord bless and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. That's my fervent prayer right now. And I just saw the viewer count go up to 11. I almost feel like, why is everyone showing up at the end? But whatever the case. If you want to join in on one of these, subscribe. You'll get notified. Hit the bell, and then you're notified when my streams are going live. So probably have something to say tomorrow night. Anyway, God bless. Thanks for coming out, everyone. Good night.